What's going on, everybody? Hope you all had a good week. It is time to preview Steelers Chargers, a battle of two, maybe surprisingly unbeaten squads. We got the home opener at Acrisure Stadium. I'm sure a lot of you guys are going to the game. If so, have fun. Steelers 1.5 point favorites in this one. So, as usual, we'll kind of just preview some things. We're going to go through some injury news, who's playing, who's in, who's out. Kind of this fun matchup that I'm really actually looking forward to, and then give you all just some stuff that I'll be watching out for as the game unfolds. But first, if you could, just please make sure that you like, subscribe, drop me a comment. Let me know what you guys think the final score is going to be. That's been kind of a cool thing that we've done through the first 2 weeks of the season. I kind of like going through and seeing everybody's predictions. So drop me that in the comments. As usual, we will kind of get started with kind of some injury news. With the Steelers, kind of a lot of expected stuff. Don't expect to see Russell Wilson. I think Justin Fields definitely going to be the starter in this one. Russ still dealing with the calf. Not really sure what's going to happen like after this week, anyways. Isaac Seumalo continues to be out. Going to be Spencer Anderson, the left guard. Michael Pruitt is going to be out. That's been notable because the Steelers lead the league right now in 13 personnel usage. So those three tight end sets are going to look a little bit different. Pruitt's a little bit better of an inline blocker than a guy like Connor Hayward. So that's going to be something to definitely take note of, especially in this type of matchup for reasons that we will talk about. Biggest injury news kind of came Friday. Troy Fautanu ended up tweaking his knee during practice, which is a little bit scary. Still don't have official confirmation on how the MRI is or went just at the time that I'm recording this. So hopefully we get good news here in the next couple of hours or so. I would be really surprised if he actually started this game. Typically, when guys don't practice, especially youngsters, they don't practice on Friday, they don't play in the game. That's just usually how it goes. We will see if they dress him just because, ideally, you don't want to go down to your fourth offensive tackle in the event that something happens to, the guys that are actually playing in the game. But I know I said I was going to do a Fautanu film room this week. Just my schedule got super crazy. So I apologize. We did crank out two videos. We did the Justin Fields video on the first half. And then for members only, I broke down the entire second half and just kind of more of like a process of explaining some of the things that went wrong for the Steelers offense, why certain things stalled out, some of the problems that they're running into, what's fixable, what looks like it could potentially be long-term issues for the offense. So if you guys are interested in kind of that deep dive, consider signing up for a membership for the channel. But I do want to talk a little bit about Fautanu just real quick about my thoughts on his debut. I thought that he played really well, man, especially for his first career game at a new position. I thought over the course of the game, you really saw him get settled in. I thought he did a good job protecting his outside shoulder. I thought that there were definitely times, especially in the second half, where he was able to generate some displacement. He was really assignment sound, just understanding where the ball was going to hit in the run game. I thought his hand placement in the run game was excellent as well. Played with good pad level. A lot of the similar things that I, saw on his college tape, and that was a reason why that I was such a big fan of him as a prospect. Now, I will say the one thing that was a little bit concerning on film, just in terms of like something that is going to need to be worked on. Hand placement and pass protection was an issue. Consistently like two-hand strike and just way too high. I thought that he actually could have probably been called for a hands to the face penalty on Justin's touchdown pass to Darnell Washington, but just there were some misses where he was just kind of aiming way too high, a little bit out of control, just trying to, he's got some power in his hands for sure. And you definitely like to see that at the tackle position, but you still got to make sure that, your hand placement's good. And I thought his was a little bit erratic and, he only had a few losses in the game. I thought he did really well against Jonathan Cooper, who I talked about pregame was a pretty good player. But, there were some hand placement issues that were kind of leading him to giving up his chest and allowing guys to kind of run through him a little bit. But overall, I think he had like 2 pressures allowed, which is, that's pretty good, especially for your first career start. So I was pretty impressed. It's kind of a bummer that he's not going to play. That is going to lead to some discussion about Broderick Jones, which, we'll see. I know last week was a little ugly. It's been pretty bumpy so far here this season, if you take into account the preseason. I think for Broderick, the one good thing that I will say is like he apparently is not playing, like he hasn't been practicing this week with the same brace on. He's got some padding on that elbow, but not that huge brace, which I think was probably limiting some of his range of motion. So again, some of the mistakes last week were like more mental than anything else, like just missed assignments, obviously the 3 penalties in a matter of however many plays, 4 or 5 plays or whatever it was. But I don't think they're going to do the rotating tackles thing again. At least I hope not. But hopefully, this will be a good opportunity for Broderick to get some playing time, maybe sooner than he probably would have expected after he got benched last week, and get back on the saddle in a game that they're really going to need him to play quite well. So I think the biggest thing that I'm kind of hoping for in the short term is that, like, maybe with the brace off, Broderick kind of regains some of that power to his profile that I felt like, his physical tools as a rookie kind of kept him above water, like his head above water, while, he kind of continues to fine tune some of the technical aspects of his game. But just so far this season, that really hasn't been the case because, I don't feel like the same power has been evident on film. So we'll see what it looks like. It's definitely a big storyline headed into this game. Another big storyline that we'll be talking about is Roman Wilson. Seems like, he has no designation for the game. Now, whether he dresses or not, I think that he will. But we'll see like what they've got in the game plan for him. I think really at this point with the Steelers receiver core, I think the non-George Pickens wide receivers like headed into this game like have 50 or less combined receiving yards on the season, which we kind of knew that this was going to be an issue like coming into the season. But can Roman come in and get like a couple packages of plays? Like, can you get him in on third downs? Can he run a deep crosser for you and create an explosive playoff play action or something like that for you in this game? That's definitely something I'm going to be watching for, as well as so a couple of the things that's been really missing from the Steelers offense. It's like the explosives. They only have 5 explosive plays on offense. That's second to last in the NFL, behind or worse than the only team worse has been the Carolina Panthers, I think, with 4. And then they've kind of struggled off of play action and in between the numbers. They only completed 4 passes so far this season in between the numbers. None of those went for more than 10 yards. Like, one of the things about Roman is he's a smaller dude, but he plays pretty well in between the numbers. Like, he plays bigger than his size. He can absorb contact. He's a really tough player up the seams. So can you utilize him in that way? Can he create an explosive play for you? I'm not expecting a huge statistical game, but like, can you give me something in the passing game to at least give defenses somebody else to kind of game plan for aside from George Pickens? So those are some things I'm going to be watching out for from the Chargers standpoint. The big injury I think worth noting is probably like just Justin Herbert. He's dealing with a high ankle. What that does for his mobility is going to definitely be like a big question mark for this one. But Junior Colson, their middle linebacker, a guy that I think he was my linebacker one coming out of this previous class. I think he's played pretty well based on what I saw on film. That's kind of the other like big guy that's out. They have a couple other guys questionable. Jasir Taylor, hopefully I'm saying his name right. He's questionable with the fibula injury. He's kind of their slot corner that they use out there. And then Josh Palmer, who's their other outside wide receiver, is also questionable in this one. So we'll see who suits up. I think that Herbert's going to play. He's a pretty tough dude. He's played through a lot of injuries so far in his young career. I would expect him to play. How effective is he moving around the pocket, scrambling, extending plays? We'll see. High ankle sprains are really tough. Obviously, we know that. Especially, you see that from time to time with quarterbacks. Like, it's big that they have to be able to move around in some capacity. So, just kind of going to dive into some numbers real quick. I think LA, middle of the pack in terms of like EPA and success rate on offense, but they are top 10 in rushing EPA and rushing success rate. You look at this offense, it's Greg Roman. Everybody's familiar with him from his days in Baltimore. You think back of like how many really top tier rushing attacks the Ravens had when he was their offensive coordinator. Of course, he had Lamar Jackson. That's great. But he did bring over 2 familiar faces, Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins. J.K. Dobbins actually leading the NFL right now in rushing yards with like 266 or something like that. And then Gus Edwards is off to a little bit of a slower start. But both these guys, too, have had big games against Pittsburgh in the past. If you look at Dobbins, I think in his 3 games against Pittsburgh, 6.9 yards per carry. And then Gus Edwards, I will never forget that 130-yard performance that he had in 2019, I believe. So these are 2 really physical, tough backs. And, Dobbins, he's been creating some explosive plays in the run game. So that's kind of the mentality. This offense with like Harbaugh and Roman, it kind of feels like Stanford-y, or like a lot like what Michigan's been in the past couple of years with Harbaugh. This is a very like heavy personnel. They lead the league in terms of snaps with two backs, so it's going to be a lot of base personnel defense for the Steelers. We're going to see a lot of Keanu Benton at zero tech. It's going to be a lot of 3-4. I expect that this is going to be a big, big game for a guy like Landon Roberts. This is like I talked about this a little bit on the Steelers afternoon drive yesterday, but this is the game that bring a Landon Roberts to Pittsburgh for a 2-year deal. Like this game, the Baltimore game, teams that want to be really physical, run downhill at you. The Chargers do a good job of like mixing zone and gap concepts. They'll run, in between the tackles, but they've also hit some explosive plays outside the tackles as well. This is the reason why your big splash signing in free agency is a linebacker like Patrick Queen, to be able to run sideline to sideline, bring a little bit of physicality to the game as well. And then Cam Hayward, I think like that's been one of the underrated storylines of the season, is that through the first 2 weeks of the year, man, Hayward looks fantastic. Like not just as a run defender, he's splitting double teams, he's taking back space as a run defender, he's creating penetration, but also as a pass rusher. Like if you go back and watch that game last week, like he was really giving Denver fits as a pass rusher. He's somebody that I think deserves a lot of praise for the Steelers, having such an effective defense through the first 2 weeks, but also like their 2-0 start. So I think that the Steelers are really well built to withstand what the Chargers want to do on offense. But I kind of wrote about this for Steelers Now too. But this is a game where like we're gonna figure out like how tough this like Steelers defense really is, like from a physical standpoint, and how mentally tough they are, because this is going to be a old school slugfest. Like if you liked the AFC Central days, if you liked the early 2000s Jerome Bettis type style of games, like this is what this game is going to be like. And I'm excited for that. I kind of think it's going to be a cool type of throwback game with two like old school franchises, or head coaches at least. But this team definitely does. When I've watched the Chargers in years past, I've always kind of thought that they were kind of like more of a finesse or soft team. That's no longer the case now. Like even through like 2 weeks, and we can talk about some of the reasons why this may be the case, but this team just looks more physical. It looks tougher. They actually look like they have some semblance of an identity. I still think that the talent is lacking in certain key areas, of which we can talk about a little bit more in depth as the video kind of goes along. But Harbaugh he's brought over an identity with him, and he's a guy who's won everywhere he's been. So I'm not exactly super surprised that they're maybe going to be a little bit ahead of schedule of where even I probably would have predicted them to be at this point. And even like defensively, like you look at their numbers on defense are like just silly. They're basically lapping the league. They lead the entire league in EPA per play and success rate. They're also first in scoring, like points per drive and everything. Now, having said this, I know I just said a lot of good things about the Chargers, and I do think that this team is like, this is going to be a fun game. The Steelers are not going to blow this team out, I don't think, and I don't see them getting blown out either. I think it's going to be a tough game, probably going to come down to the fourth quarter. Having said that, I think you can look at a lot of these numbers, and the Chargers look like world beaters. I got to be completely honest with you guys. Carolina Panthers, not a real football team right now. Like, I watched every single snap of the game. I watched most of it during the broadcast. I had it on one of my screens down here on Sunday, but I also like went back and watched the All 22. That team is atrocious. I mean, they lack talent. The quarterback's playing terribly. It's just not real football. So like you almost have to take every year. There's like usually like one team in the NFL where if you're trying to scout or like watch film on a team and they played this particular team, it's just not a fair fight. So you almost have to throw those numbers and throw that film completely out. And that's basically what I'm doing with that game. Now, I still think when you go to the Raiders game, they did a lot of things that were particularly impressive. In that one, they're playing good football, but it's just the numbers. Like, I don't think that this team is going to finish with like a top 5 defense. Like, they may be the best defense in the league right now through 2 weeks, but they're not that talented. But we can talk about some of the things that I do think they do well on that side of the ball, and really want to talk about Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa. So just a couple things with them, like Mac in particular, he's had a little bit of a resurgence in the past, 24 months or so. He looks really, really good, man. Like one of the premier like power rushers that we've seen over in the 2000s. He's still got it, man. The speed to power conversion is unreal. He's gonna, like, if he aligns in a wide 9 technique, he's gonna try to run straight through your chest. They do flip sides a little bit. Mac will mostly be against Dan Moore. And then Bosa will mostly align on the other side, but they do some funky stuff. Like they'll play three edge rushers. I've even seen them play four edge rushers. They got Tui Pelotu. They got Bud Dupree if he plays. They will kind of mix and match and do some things. Now Bosa is like more like he's a really good athlete too, but like he is more of like in that finessey kind of technical, like technician bucket for me. Loves the two hand swipe. They call it the side scissors. Really good hands, man. Super quick hands. Like one of the things for Broderick this week is make sure that he's like protecting his outside arm because Bosa's like one of those dudes, man. Like super quick hands. Like you give it to him, he's gonna swipe it away. So, and like another thing that I really like and appreciate about both those guys, especially Mac, is like they both play the run really well. So I think Bosa over the course of his career has gotten better as a run defender. Mac has always like been probably the best edge defending run player in the league, really, since he came into the league. The way that he can take back space, he can hold blocks, he can stack and shed. Like I said, he just has so much power in his hands. It's really difficult to block him. Now, I will say, like, the way that you can kind of get after this Chargers defense, in my opinion, is I still think that they're going to be susceptible to the run because of all the light boxes that they like to play. You just look at like some of the defensive numbers, and we can kind of go over like the coverages that they want to play. But this team has played a light box, so meaning like six or less players in the box on 73% of their snaps. That's by far the top in the league. Jesse Minter's their new coordinator. He's kind of from that Ravens, Mike McDonald kind of tree of way they like to do things. You're going to see a lot of split field coverage. They lean really heavily into like cover six. I think they're actually like the league leaders right now in cover six. And what they'll do is they'll kind of run some targeted coverages, probably to George Pickens side, where they're going to run cover two over there, get multiple sets of eyes over him. But they play 21% quarters. That's above league average. They don't play a ton of cover three. They will mix in some like NTTs, some non-traditional Tampas. They'll do some funky stuff with some stunts in passing situations as well. Like I said, when they bring some of those unique personnel groups on the field, but you can get after this team in terms of like running the football. If the Steelers have any hope of being like a successful offense, they have to be a really efficient, hyper efficient run team, and they're going to be in heavy personnel. So I'm sure that the Chargers are probably going to play a little bit more in the box this week, but they have to punish them for trying to play like six guys. And that's just the way that it's going to have to be. I think the Steelers can do it. I think that the interior of the offensive line, Zach Frazier's playing at a really high level. James Daniels has been really volatile. He's had a lot of really good reps, and then he's had some like uncharacteristically bad reps as well. But I still think he's, a very good player. Spencer Anderson's like trying his hardest right now to keep his head above water, and I definitely appreciate like his contributions. And it sucks that Sam Olive's probably not going to be back for another like couple weeks, so that's going to be something they're going to have to kind of overcome. But from a talent perspective, the interior of this defensive line isn't nearly as talented as their edge rushers are, and I think you can kind of get after them, getting running downhill, doing some different things. Now, I will say this about their secondary. Their secondary players are playing a little bit better. Derwin James, like they're trying to get his career kind of like back on track as well. Aloy Gilman is a guy that's been banged up a little bit, but he was like honestly like one of their only good players that actually played well last year on this defense. That was pretty bad. They brought over a pair of Titans, Elijah Molden. They traded for him and Christian Fulton. Both those guys have actually been like pretty solid through the first 2 weeks of the season. And then Asante Samuel's always been a guy that like I really liked him coming out of the draft. Very fluid mover, very agile, quick, has enough long speed, has some ball skills to him as well. One thing about him, though, that you can get him on, he could be a little bit grabby, and then also he didn't like to tackle. So this is a team where you kind of got to make him tackle, like throw the ball his way in the flat and force him to tackle. I think like his missed tackle percentage is up in like the 17-18% range. That was kind of like the only thing I hated about his college film was I just didn't think that he was a willing participant in run defense. And that's some of the reasons why he's only played on the outside so far in the NFL. But it's going to be a good test. Like I said, I think the big thing for the Steelers is, it would be great if they could get out to an early lead in this one so that they could kind of grind this team out and try to, Arthur Smith, he's done a really good job over the course of the first 2 weeks, just protecting the offensive line, just the amount of like keepers they ran, the amount of bootlegs, even like the play action passes, even though like the play action game, a straight play action game in the pocket hasn't been great from an efficiency standpoint, it's taken a lot of pressure off the offensive tackles. And I definitely think that they're going to need to do that, especially like as Broderick tries to like try to rebuild his confidence and up against these two really good edge rushers that are probably like two of the three best players that they got on their entire team. But let's talk about the Chargers offense real quick too. Herbert, I think some of the things everybody knows about like the rocket arm and just like the velocity that he can, like this dude can really spin it. He's got a rocket launcher on his right shoulder. I think some of the things that I really appreciate about Herbert, I think he's one of the probably two or three best in the game in terms of like navigating the pocket. Does a really good job of, not taking sacks, keeping his offensive line clean, moving around the pocket. Like he's a guy who can scramble and can make things happen, but just like those subtle quick twitch movements in the pocket, he can throw under pressure, throw off platform with guys in his lap. All those things are really valuable from a quarterback position. And they've got really good bookend tackles. I think Rashawn Slater's playing like their left tackle. I think he's playing like probably some of the best ball that he's played in at least a couple years. So him and Alex Highsmith, they're going to be a really good, fun matchup. And then they got Joe Alt on the right side of their line. And Alt was a guy that I really liked coming out of Notre Dame. I think pretty much everybody did. I'll kind of like read my snippet of him coming out, but he was my fourth ranked player. He's my number one tackle. Kind of the little blurb I wrote for my big board was franchise altering left tackle prospect. Of course, he's playing on the right, very light on his feet, consistently balanced, understand how to use his levers to make first significant contact. Not necessarily a people mover, which are in play strength, but still a good run blocker already. He's a good athlete, plays with shocking good leverage despite his height, has all the goods to protect the starting quarterback at the next level. And one of the things too is like a lot of people talked about like all being 6'9". Is he going to be able to like play with proper pad level? Or are guys at the next level who are like bigger, stronger, faster going to be able to take advantage of that? And so far that hasn't really been an issue. Like he did give up, I think, a sack, like one pressure / sack that he gave up was a result of like somebody being able to get into his chest and kind of pry him open a little bit. So I'm interested to see like TJ doesn't go to like very many like power moves. Like TJ's pretty exclusive, like ghost, dip, rip, and stuff like that on the outside. So I'm curious if like maybe he kind of tests that anchor a little bit and tests that pad level, maybe just to see if he can get a quick pressure like early in the game to get Herbert off his mark. And again, we just don't know like what. I mean, Herbert could not play in this game too, which obviously would be significant for the Steelers. Easton Stick and Taylor Heineke are their backups. Heineke is kind of like new to their team, so like I don't know if they would go to him, even though he has more NFL experience. But how Herbert moves around the pocket is going to be a significant thing in this one. And like some of the things too that I said about the Chargers defense in terms of like being weaker, kind of up the spine or up the middle, really applies to the Chargers offense too. One of the things that I watched like with the Raiders game, they were doing a really good job of like kind of gaming up their pass protection rules. So some of the things that they were doing was having like both of their linebackers kind of like walk up to the line of scrimmage, kind of get the center to declare which way they're half sliding, and then blitz in the other direction. I thought they got home on a couple stunts too. Steelers haven't been very stunt heavy this year. They typically aren't. They've really mostly just played like spot drop cover 3 and then rushed their first 4 guys on the line of scrimmage, and they've just out talented the first 2 teams that they played. But I think they may need to be a little bit more creative this week, especially like depending on the game script. But those are some things that the Chargers offensive line, in my opinion, has kind of struggled with a little bit early on. And Herbert's kind of pocket navigation skills have kind of masked some of it. But those are things that I would keep an eye on. I also don't think that Bradley Bozeman, their center, is like very reliable in pass protection. So we talked about the Chargers are going to play a lot of like 2-back. They're going to play a lot of 21 personnel too. So you're going to see a lot of Keanu Benton out there in nose tackle. I think that's a major mismatch. So I would not be surprised if like Benton got his first sack of the season in this one, especially, depending on Herbert's mobility. The Chargers are honestly kind of like in a similar situation that the Steelers are in too, in terms of their playmakers. Just on the perimeter, like they lack playmaking talent out there. They've got Quentin Johnson, who's a first-round pick from last year. He's actually playing a little bit better. I think they're using him a little bit better. You would look at him and his size and think that he's like this prototypical X type of receiver. That's really not like his game. He did win on a fade ball last week and caught caught a long ball touchdown over J.C. Horn, but he's a guy who's really good after the catch. It kind of same thing goes for Lad McConkey, a guy out of Georgia who was trying to figure out where he was in my rankings, but I know I had a second round grade on him. Some of the things I just wrote about him was like thin route running savant, understands how to create separation, excellent stop and start ability. It's kind of his calling card. Double moves. That's also something he's really good at. I think he's pretty unproven versus press coverage. I thought that Georgia, when guys were able to get their hands on him, whether it be at the line of scrimmage or throughout the route, like he kind of struggled playing through contact because he's a smaller dude. They've been keeping him mostly on the slot, but if Palmer doesn't play, does he have to play more on the outside? I don't really know. But there's not really a guy on this team that you would look at and say, like, okay, like Joey Porter needs to go shadow this person. Like, that's not like really how this thing's going. But I do think that Roman is a little bit more creative than I think people maybe give him credit for, even though like some of his passing game stuff is a little bit archaic. But this team has a very distinct way of how they want to win. Like, it's very much like the Steelers. They want to run the ball on early downs. They want to stay ahead of the chains. Ideally, both these teams would like to play with a lead. So I think I think this game's going to be like a rock fight to where it's going to be low scoring. It's going to be, like I said, like my bold prediction on the afternoon drive over on Steelers Now was that I think there might be like 75 to 80 rushing attempts in this one, just because I think both these teams would be perfectly content with a 10-9 score. And we're just going to play like Big 12 football with 12 personnel and just run the ball up and down the field. But it would be kind of interesting just to see, because I think it would tell us a lot about how these offenses are going to function later in the season if the other like got a lead on them, just because we haven't seen really either of these teams deal with much adversity on the offensive side of the ball just yet. But some of the things I'm looking forward to seeing, obviously Roman's debut, but how they incorporate him into the offense. Can they generate some explosive plays? I think that the run game, I kind of mentioned this in the video that I did in the members section about the struggles in the second half in the Denver game. I'm not worried about the run game because I really do think that once Samalo gets back and takes over for Spencer Anderson, I think that is going to solve a decent chunk of their problems. I think Zach Frazier is already like a legitimately good player, like not just for a rookie, but I think he's like a pretty solid center already, which not overly surprising based on like my evaluation of him coming out of college. I felt like he was really pro ready in that regard. Regardless of who is at right tackle or what the tackle situation is, I think the interior is going to be good enough for them to be able to be a really good run team. They've got to figure out some way to get some explosive plays, though. We just haven't really seen that. I think with all the funky stuff that Mentor kind of does on defense with the simulated pressures and the split safety looks, and like maybe they try to do some of these targeted coverages to take away Pickens. This might be a game where like Justin uses his legs a little bit more than he has, just to see like, okay, I don't like this read. And, one of the problems that they had against Denver is like the secondary receivers just were not getting open. Like they were not able to create any space against the Broncos corners. If that's the case again this week, I think, Justin just kind of pulling it, taking some runs, try to see if you can generate some explosives there. But big thing is like I just want to see is what does Roman look like in his debut? How's he being deployed if we do get a chance to see him? And then just penalties. Like I talked about it last week after the game, but this is just not a team that can afford to commit 9-10 penalties a game. And like it's been a significant talking point for Tomlin in his press conferences. I know they had officials at practice this week, so that's something too. But there's nothing else other to say than like they have got to play cleaner ball, especially once competition gets better. Like they've got to play cleaner ball, and some of the things I'm looking forward to. But I think that pretty much does. I'm sure I missed some stuff, but not trying to make this a 40-minute game preview or anything like that. But I had a lot to say because I'm actually like really excited about this because when the schedule came out, I saw Steelers Chargers home opener. Like I wasn't going to go to the home opener in person, so like this wasn't like a game that I was super just pumped up for or jazzed up for. But after like watching the film and just seeing like how the Chargers have played, I think this is a really good precursor for the Steelers getting ready for like AFC North ball later in the season. Because let's face it, like this feels like Baltimore week. Like when I watch the Chargers on film, this feels like what I've grown accustomed to seeing like the Ravens do on offense. Now, again, I don't think that this team on either side of the ball has like 9-10 win talent, but they're tough as nails. And just the way that they're playing enthusiastic. You know, they're flying to the ball on defense. I think they've definitely got some star talent. You know, when Bosa and Mac are healthy, the defense looks a lot different. And they're healthy right now, so we'll see what that looks like. But I think it's going to be a really good game. I think it's going to be a smash mouth game. And like I said, we're going to find out how tough, how physical the Steelers defense in particular is in this one. But I'm optimistic. I think that this is a game that they will probably be able to pull out. But we'll see. But like I said at the beginning of the video, please make sure that you like, subscribe, drop me a comment. Let me know what y'all think the final score is going to be. As always, please make sure to check out the link in the description. If you're looking for some Steelers gear, our channel sponsor Homage has some really cool, unique t-shirt designs. I just ordered me another shirt for the regular season, something I can take to Pittsburgh with me when I head up there here in a couple weeks. But if you're going to the game, please make sure you have fun. And after that, after the game on Sunday, probably around maybe halftime of the fours or before the Sunday night football game, I will have a recap of just what we saw, important takeaways, all that good stuff up on the channel. So just again, I really appreciate everybody tuning in, staying to the end of the video. And if you're looking for something to do up until Sunday, again, over there, full second half breakdown. I think it's like a 30-40 minute video, just as some observations on some things that are happening right now with the Steelers offense. I think you guys will probably enjoy. So as always, enjoy the rest of your all's weekend. Peace and love.